Well, hello there. Welcome back to Blue Hind's Garage. Today is Sunday, July 6th. Been out here playing games with this today. Not all day, about a half a day. I'm trying to get this ready so that once we have it all together, we can fire it up on the chassis here. You see I mounted a little control panel. That amounts to, these are just spare parts I got laying around. That amounts to a on-off switch on the left. The green is the start button, and the only gauge I'm going to use is a oil pressure gauge. I don't have any of those hooked up yet. The little panel's there, and it's attached. You see it again. I use strut. I use strut all the time. One of those things you learn as an electrician. I got the battery on. This was Scott's idea. Where am I going to put the batteries? Just put a piece of plywood there, put the battery on it. Great idea. So that's what I did. And I took some number 2 wire, which is smaller than I would use on a permanent basis. But took some number 2 wire and made some battery cables. There's the positive cable. There's the negative cable. See it there attached to the bell housing. And here I'll go around and show you what it looks like at the battery. That's what it looks like at the battery. And I've got, from my past projects, the 57 Chevy, the Model A engine, whatever. When I buy this stuff, I like to buy a little extra so I have it on hand the next time I need it. I've got a whole bin here full of, see what it says there? Battery cable terminals. That's the flux you use when you solder it. I got the little solder pills that go in the I got a variety of terminals for different size wire. I don't know what size these are. They're not marked, but they work perfect for the number 2 wire. I think they might be for something like that. I don't know. So I used 4 of those, 2 for the positive, 2 for the negative. They work perfect. They got the 3/8 hole in them and everything. I just fill them with solder and then heat the wire, put flux on it, slowly stick it in the little tube there that's full of solder. It overflows. All the excess overflows. If you go nice and slow, it stays full right to the top when the wire's all the way to the bottom of the little tube. So that's what I did. There's my solder and my paste. I put the torches away already. So that was today's little project. That was 4 hours probably, getting that stuff out. And again, you know, working on this without trying not to damage anything, it slows you down a lot. So anyway, that much of that's done. I'm gonna go down the auto parts place tomorrow and get some standard old small block Chevy motor mounts and transmission mount, and we're going to carefully lift this up, you know, remove anything that might get damaged, rocker arm covers probably, and cover everything else. Put the bridle on it, lift it, take these motor mounts and transmission mount off, put the other ones on, and see if we gain the 1/4 inch back that somehow or other the engine is moved. The engine is in a different place than when we fabricated it, you know, mocked it up in this chassis. And we both think that's a result of different motor and transmission mounts. So we're going to try the ones that we used when we built this are up here on my toolbox. They're just some old ones that we had laying around. Didn't think, we never planned on using them permanently. Well, that's a lesson that we learned. When you mock it up with the permanent ones. So, because everybody in the auto community now says these things made where they're made, and you know where that is, are all junk these days. So we went with something that we thought was a little higher level, higher grade. And we believe that's why the motor is a 1/4 of an inch. And, you know, normally you wouldn't care about a 1/4 of an inch change in the motor. but the exhaust doesn't fit. The exhaust, what it did is it moved it away from the exhaust, which means it moved it closer to the radiator, which means there already was a real tight clearance problem. Not a problem, clearance condition between the water pump pulley and the finger guard on the fan. This plastic. The water pump pulley comes really close to this. So now it has moved 1/4 inch closer to the radiator. I'm not sure, but I'm expecting it to have a conflict right there now. So we're trying to gain that, and we don't know. There may be conflicts in other places. If we modify the exhaust and leave the engine where it is, we might find down the road there's other issues that we haven't even considered. We don't know about yet. You know, who knows what. So the best thing to do is when you find a problem, fix it. Don't say, well, it don't matter. You learn that over a long period of time, with experience. Don't matter. That hardly is ever true. Anyway, that's the progress for today, July 6th. Thanks for watching. Bye. Today we want to see what we can get going on painting the radiator. I've got it stacked over here where I'm hoping it's out of harm's way. Right there. So I'm going to get that ready and see if I can get a coat of radiator. I ordered radiator paint from Eastwood. In case anybody doesn't know, radiator paint. You don't paint radiators with normal paint. The paint that's designed for radiators allows it to expel heat, exchange heat. Normal paint doesn't do that. So I bought some radiator paint from Eastwood, and I've got to get that ready. It's not terrible, but it is very dirty. It's got a few places where we've done some modifications, so there's no paint on it. So I'm going to spend an hour or whatever scuffing it with Scotch-Brite or something, and blowing it all off, cleaning it with wax and grease remover, and see if I can get a coat of paint on it. And what I've just finished doing is spending, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes putting that together out of pieces of stuff I have. Didn't customize it at all. It's just pieces. I used those legs. These were originally the pieces that I cut up to use for lifting the bed off the truck, off the Model A. I used them most recently when I had that paint parts fixture over here. I took it apart too soon. I could have used it again here, but anyway, I still had the legs, so I put the angle brackets on the bottom, found that board. It's what I use when I put the little saw out here to work with. The other strut I had, it was laying out there. I think that was other leftover pieces from lifting the bed off the truck. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to hang the radiator in the middle of that so I can get around both sides of it for painting, and the bottom. Top, bottom, in other words, everywhere on the radiator. I can do it if I hang it in the middle of that. And then I'll probably put a drop cloth on the floor in here, roll the chassis out, roll the car out, and spray it in here. Let it set so it's dry, won't collect dust, and then open the door and put the cars and stuff back in. If I don't have time to do that today, because it's already 3 o'clock, if I don't have time to do that today, I'll just set it all up and paint it tomorrow. Here goes. Forgot. Motor mounts. Remember I told you the motor appears to have moved 1/4 of an inch with the installation of new motor and transmission mounts. I bought some more motor mounts yesterday, the regular kind, you know, the nothing special kind. And what I've done here is bolted the new one face to face with the one that we used when we did the fabrication, and it appears as though they match. What we're going to do, we have a plan right now. What we're going to do is take these new ones off the motor and switch them side to side, so that, you see there they are right there, so that in the event that they are off center by that 1/4 of an inch, hopefully turning them side to side will set the engine back where we want it to be. So that's going to be our first activity. When we do this, we're going to take the weight off of it. And did I show you? I made something to protect the top of the motor. I can't show you very well right now. We're going to take the weight off it, lift the weight off it with the cherry picker. Bolts are already loose here. I've got to take these cooler lines loose so I can lift the motor without doing any damage, bending anything. And like I say, first thing we'll do is trade sides with those existing mounts that we have up there. If they're off center, it ought to correct the problem. If not, make it off center the wrong way. I'm not sure, but we're going to try that first. Well, there you go. After a few hours, it's not ready to paint yet, but it's very close. I just have to wipe it down with the wax and grease remover, give it a good air blow. I just did that, but I got to do it again. Make sure it's as clean as I can get it. I'm not going to wash it with water or whatever. I probably should do that, but I'm not going to wait that long for it to dry after I wash it and all that other stuff. At any rate, tomorrow we're going to see if we can get some paint on this. Cross your fingers. Bye. You can get an idea what's up today by looking at that. We're going to spray that shortly. You see, I spent some time yesterday, probably an hour and a half, getting this ready. I sanded it, mostly Scotch-Brite, but some sanding with the 220 sandpaper. You see all the shiny brass. That's mostly from the sandpaper, where it was nicked and chipped and stuff. So I think it's ready. Today well, first of all, last night I washed it down with water, even for any dust that might be in the fins and stuff like that. Put it out in the sun this morning, let the sun hit it and dry it. It was nice and warm, so I'm pretty sure it's dry. I cleaned it with that stuff. So I think it's ready for paint. And let me show you. I mentioned this before. That's the paint I was talking about. Radiator black. It says it's formulated to allow the radiator to transfer heat. Good up to 300 degrees. So we're going to see how that works. Okay, well, here goes. You see, I got one of these handles. I like these things. It makes it more like using a spray gun. We'll see how that works. As usual, I'm going to start with the difficult spots, hit those first, and then do a complete coat. And we'll see how that works. It says 2 light coats are better than 1 heavy one, so we'll kind of keep that in mind. Bye. Well, there's the first coat, and it's a pretty nice coat. I love Eastwood paint. It's without a doubt, and by quite a bit, the best spray paint I have ever used. I mean, it makes a real, look at this finish. It makes a real nice pattern. You hardly ever get a run or a sag. In any of their products that I've used, I use the Extreme Chassis Black all the time, the semi-gloss and the primer for it. This is, like I said, the first coat, and it's not a heavy coat. So, if it comes that good on the second coat, I'd be really happy. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. Okay, well, there's the second and final coat. So far, I'm very happy. Yeah, so far I'm very happy. You see, I finally got this all back together. This all was part of what went to the plater most recently, because it was all nasty looking. It was, you know, corroded and aged looking, you know, patina looking. And that's not the look I'm looking for. So I took it all apart, brought it to the plater. All the gold stuff is new plating. All of this stuff is also went. It was like 130 pieces or something like that. And tell you the truth, I don't remember what a lot of these are for. I know as I was taking this apart the other day and finalizing other things, I kept coming up with other stuff that needed to be plated. It'll make itself known once we run across it. But anyway, got this all back together. That was a bit of a chore. I had lots of pictures in the phone here. So I'm going to go have some lunch. It's 2:30 right now. Going to have some lunch, and then I'm going to come back here and try something that I have not been looking forward to. I've been getting ready for it now for a week. You notice the box there? That's to protect the motor because of what I'm about to try and do. So, like I said, I'm not looking forward to doing this. I'm looking forward to being past it. I'm going to try and do is lift the motor, at least the front of it, so I can get those motor mounts out, at least one of them out, and compare it to the other ones I bought, see if it matches, see if they're offset at all, see what I can learn about them. And go from there, depending on what I find. Go from there. Might do nothing else. I might take them both out and leave the cherry picker underneath this, on top of the, hanging the motor until I get the other motor mounts that I just bought ready to use, because they're not painted and there's a lot of rubber on them where, to paint them is really difficult without cleaning them up first, because there's excess rubber all over a lot of the parts of them. So it takes a while just preparing them to get painted, just cleaning them up so you can paint the part you want to paint. This is what I'm talking about. See, this is all prepared for paint. All the areas that don't need to have rubber vulcanized on them have been cleaned off. See? So that takes a while because they're pretty sloppy. This is what they look like when you get them. A whole lot different, see? There's very little bare metal there. And it's, like I said, the process is just quick and dirty. So I did one of them just so I could use it for comparison. You remember I had the rods on there. When I take the gold one off the motor, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put the rods and put them next to each other like I did the ones that we used to place this motor in the chassis in the first place, mock up the motor. I'm going to do that with the gold one compared to this. and that'll help me decide what I'm going to do with the gold one. All right, so anyway, I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, well, as you can see, I'm about ready to try and pick this thing up and unload it off of the motor mounts, at least one of the motor mounts. Here's the easy side to see. So let's see what happens. I'll set you up over here on the tripod and you can watch what's going on. Okay, well, here goes. Let's see how hard it's going to be to get one of these motor mounts out of there. And we're lifting the chassis up so far, taking the weight off of it. There it comes. I see I need a little more tape or something around that fuel pump. That ought to work. All right, let's give that a shot. That'll easily allow me to get rid of one of these. Okay, so I got the motor mount off. I'm going to go put it on the rods and compare it with the one that the one we used to mock up the motor. I'll bring you back when I got something to show you. Okay, well, here's the new motor mount compared to the old motor mount. And you can see there is absolutely no difference between these two mounts that would make the motor move at all, other than height. The slots on the bolts are 1/8 of an inch difference, which I don't see as making. We're looking at horizontal differences, not vertical. This is a vertical difference. One's 1/8 of an inch higher than the other, or lower than the other. I think it makes the motor. Let's see, hang on a minute. The new mount is, these are upside down. So the new mount is 2 7/16 from the top down. And the old one is 2 9/16 from the top down. The old mount's going to make the motor a little higher. The new mount's going to make the motor a little bit lower. But like I said, I don't believe it's 1/8 of an inch. I don't believe that's going to make any difference in that we're seeing. But like I say, you can see here on a center. This is the middle of the mount. This rod's the middle of the mount horizontally. And these little tabs are face to face with each other, so there's no difference. So we're back to square one, figuring out why the exhaust no longer fits. I mean, It's an eighth. It's quarter of an inch short of where it should be. Where when you put the first section of pipe from the collector back to the first hanger, the exhaust is a quarter of an inch shorter than it should be on both sides, like the whole engine's moved forward a quarter of an inch. We're going to have to do a lot of thinking to figure this one out. You know, these simple things that you run into, that you tend to build these really elaborate reasons until you find the actual cause, and it's so simple that you completely walk right by it. I'm afraid it's what we're faced with here. So more to come. Okay, well, after about an hour, maybe a little more, that's what that looks like, as opposed to what I started with. Remember I just showed you a little while ago? All cleaned up. All the extra rubber that don't belong places is gone. I can paint it if I want to. For now, I'm putting it on the motor. I want to see if these change the location of the motor at all before I go any further with paint and prep. Well, went to all the trouble and changed the motor mounts. Put the ones that I got the other day that matched the ones that we used. Where is it? That matched the ones that we used when we mocked this up, when we fabricated this chassis. There they are. As far as I can tell, at this point, I went to a lot of trouble to do all of that. But as far as I can tell at this point, nothing changed. You know, actually there isn't enough space in these rear crossmember holes for the motor to move a quarter of an inch. They just barely line up where they're at now. It is on the forward edge of the hole, but there isn't a quarter of an inch behind those bolts for it to come back. So I'm thinking there's something else. At this point, I'm thinking there's something else. Maybe it's just the exhaust that something changed. The little tabs, not the tabs on, well, the frame got welded, the exhaust got welded, anything could have changed. Everything was tacked. You see that those two brackets don't line up. Those seem to line up pretty good. This all lines up just fine because there's a 3/8 thick plate that's threaded right there, and that mount on the exhaust works perfect. This mount looks like the tabs line up. That one doesn't. And as I recall, when we put this one up, this one didn't look too good either. So at this point, I'm kind of leaning towards we just need to modify the exhaust to make it work because something changed. Until we put the radiator and the hood and all the rest of it where it needs to go, where all the gaps are. I mean, you can't just put the radiator there and see if there's a conflict with the water pump. Here, I'm showing that. There's, I don't know if I'm showing you brackets or not. Those two brackets don't exactly line up, and they're off good 1/8 of an inch. You see how the black one on top isn't lined up with the one on the pipe. So I'm thinking that we're going to end up cutting these brackets off and moving them. Might have to extend the pipe too, because I think the pipe was on the short side, if I remember right. Both of them. But anyway, I got to put the headers back on and see how everything fits. I don't think anything moved. And the only way I'm going to know that is put the headers back on and see if the pipes meet up with the collector. That's where we're at right now. So here we are. I just put the permanent ones in today, so we're back where we were 3 weeks ago. There they are. Right there, there's one of them. Obviously it's painted. The other ones were gold iridite or whatever you want to call it, yellow cad. The other ones were different though. They were thicker. They had a different shape. You know what I mean? These here, the motor goes on engages in them much easier and more naturally. So there's one. The other one is up here. There it is. Sorry about that. So, and it's a bear getting these ready. There's that when they do the rubber, vulcanize the rubber to the metal pieces. They aren't too careful with it, so the rubber's all over the stuff you want to paint. So you got to kind of clean that off in order to paint it. And it takes about an hour each to get them all cleaned up, and then another half an hour to tape what's the rubber that you got to tape so you don't paint the rubber. Obviously, the paint isn't going to stick on the rubber, so it's kind of a chore. But anyway, they're done. Changed the transmission mount too. And that kind of fits better than it did before too. The other one was much taller, and that wasn't a good thing here because there's no space. You see that cross member is above. Right now it's covered with, here, let's see, there, that cross member right there. It's covered with tape now, just as a protection, so when I'm working on this, I'm not damaging finished stuff. Good morning. Welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. Today is Sunday, July 20th. Made a lot of progress here this week. Got the shifter on. I can't show you that very well from this perspective. You can see it up there, the purple tape. The shifter's attached. The e-brake is attached. The e-brake cables are all installed. You can see them here. And here leading to the rear wheel. Here leading to the rear wheel. There's nothing going across the chassis on this other than a shaft up there, a cross shaft up there. Okay, so e-brake cables and hardware is all installed and functional. I just finished putting the pan back on the transmission. We had that off to verify that when the stick was in park, reverse, neutral, whatever, the detents on the transmission shifter itself were in the same detents, and they were all making, and they weren't. We had to adjust it. We spent some time here yesterday getting that dialed in, and it's a little tricky. You know, you would think you start with the shifter on the transmission all the way to one extreme, and the shifter on the shift handle itself all the way to one extreme. You put the rod between the two and it's all going to work. Well, it don't. It hits the detent on the end you started, but the other one, the other extreme, it misses. And what you have to do in order to correct that is start in the middle of the throw. So you start, which is like the neutral position. It's 3 positions down from the end, and I think 4 positions up from the other end. So you start with both levers in neutral. The lever on the transmission here in neutral, or the 3rd step down, and the lever, the detent on the stick in the same position. And you make the rod tie the two shifter levers together, and then it works. On both extremes, it works, and obviously in the middle where you started, it works. So, like I said, I just finished putting the pan back on. In the meantime, I've been doing some wiring. This is hard to show. You see, that's a big cable. That's a main cable right there, that black with the yellow tie wrap to it. The yellow is the starter signal coming through the neutral safety switch. That's why there's 2 of them here, because there's 2 of them here because they join at the neutral safety switch. I still have to put the other cable in, the ground cable, which is going to go to the bell housing. So that's kind of what I'm working on today. I have the radiator in place on a temporary basis so we can start and run the engine. That's what this is all about. See, I made a temporary brace to hold it, you know, because When it's installed in the permanent fashion, there's two rods that come from the firewall to the radiator. Well, the body's not there. There is no firewall. So what I've done is, in a way you could say, simulated that with that 1/3/8 rod from the control stalk. Let's see if I can. There's a little control panel up there, see, for starting the motor. And you see the rod go into the radiator from that stalk that's holding the control panel. So I gotta see what I can do with coolant hoses. What I'm gonna try and do on a temporary basis, I have some. I have the whole. You remember this motor was on a run stand, and I have a box up there with all kinds of hardware that goes with the run stand, and that includes radiator hoses. So I'm going to look up there. What I have is the ridged kind, the universal kind that you bend to whatever shape you need. I'm going to see if that works on the top. And then I don't know if the diameter is correct. When I did that stand for the Model A motor, I had a couple of molded hoses, couple of elbows that I'd coupled together with a piece of pipe in between. I'm going to see if one of those will work on the bottom. At this time, I have no need for Model A run stand. I still have the stand, but I don't have a motor at this point. So until I have another motor, if I ever do, I won't need those hoses. I'm going to see if I can make one work here on the bottom. It's a tiny little short. This configuration, the water pump and the outlet on the radiator is almost too close together. They're only 5 inches apart, and they're really, a 90 there is going to be a real tight 90, so that could be an issue. But I'm going to have a look and see what I can figure out with that. For that, you notice the battery is up there. Like I said, I'm running cables and wiring for all of that. I got to wire the distributor. I got to run the little plastic line to the oil pressure gauge from the oil pressure sender there out on the back of the block. The port, it's not a sender, it's just a port coming out of an oil galley on the back of the block. Going to tie the gauge to that. Then we're just about ready to try, fill coolant, and it's got oil in it already. We're about ready to see if it'll run. Oh, we got to make the exhaust, tie the exhaust back together again, because you can see here with the new motor mounts and the new transmission mounts, the permanent ones, that still doesn't quite work. So we have to modify the pipe, extend it, whatever else we need to do to get that to work. This side's, I don't have the header on this side, but this side's the same, the passenger side. Oh, hello there. Welcome back. Well, we made some progress today. Not as much as I would have liked to, but a fair amount. Got the wiring pretty much finished. See, that's all wired up and cable tied on its way over to the battery. Red lead is the red wire right there is ignition going to the coil. The yellow stuff you see here, neutral safety switch going to the solenoid. I tested it. Got a little yellow jumper there that's temporary, and there needs to be another fuse there. And it all operates like it should. You see this is in the off position. This is the only switch, like selector switch that I had here, the Allen Bradley style selector switch that I had here. It's hand off auto. All I needed was off on. So this one has another set of contacts. This way is one set of contacts, off in the middle, that way is another set of contacts. So the way I'm using it is with it on to the right. And it works. Turn it on, the signal goes to the starter through the neutral safety switch. That's one place where I don't have what I'd like to have. I had the neutral safety switch all adjusted so that it was making the circuit in park, making the circuit in neutral, and none of the running the drive gears. positions, detents, whatever you want to call them. Okay, and then yesterday we fooled with the detents, and we got, because it was wrong, we weren't getting to the low gear, the number 1 detent. So we have it now, so we adjusted everything so that the stick puts the transmission in all the drive positions. Park, reverse, neutral, drive, 1, 2. The problem with doing what we did is I think we changed the position of this arm relative to the stick there. And the way you adjust the neutral safety switch is by loosening these 2 screws and rotating this piece, because there's detents. The neutral safety switch is screwed on there. There's detents in this square piece. Whoops, sorry. Detents in this square piece. But it's really delicate. You move that thing a tiny bit. You loosen those screws and you move that plate a tiny bit and it changes something. You know, it's really hard. So what I'm getting now is I get a circuit through park. It goes off in reverse, goes back on again in neutral. But when I go from neutral to drive, the circuit is still made. I cannot get it to open that circuit between neutral and drive without screwing up something somewhere else. And like I said, yesterday morning before we screwed with the detents in the transmission, that was working like it should. So I don't know. I put the pan on the transmission today, and I really don't want to take it off again. I'm not sure. I think what I need to do, this is on a spline. I think what I need to do is move that, because we did move this, we think 1 tooth in the spline. I think what we need to do is move it back that 1 tooth, or maybe 2 teeth, whatever. I don't know if it's that critical. And then readjust everything so that it makes all the detents, which means probably have to take the pan off the transmission. It's not going to be any time better than now, but I really don't feel like doing it now. I'll probably change my mind a couple of days down the road, at least a day down the road. I'm tired today. So that's very likely what will happen in the end. I rarely leave something unfixed that I'm pretty sure I know how to fix. At any rate, that's where we are. So today, like I said, I got the pan on the transmission, which may need to get removed. I've got all the wiring finished. I finished this neutral safety circuitry and that other stuff. I made a piece of wire to use as a skeleton, whatever you want to call it, as a guide for that little tube oil, for the oil pressure switch. You know, a little plastic tube. It comes in a little roll that's 2 inches in diameter, and it wants to stay all rolled up 2 inches in diameter. So if you just put it from one place to the other, you're going to have all these coils, or it's going to be all goofy. So I could have done that. Obviously, this is all temporary, but I don't like doing that stuff. So I made this piece of wire, found a couple of locations, one on each end, and strung the plastic along the wire with some cable ties. So now that's also done. So we're getting closer and closer.